mean, a good example is Google Maps. I mean, that's an algorithm. It's a piece of, whether you call it, elevate it to artificial intelligence is another question. You know, where is that threshold where you say code has become, you know, artificially intelligent, and that's kind of an interesting one. But essentially, it's, you know, if this road is very blocked, we'll send you down this road. If this, it's basically a set of rules like that. Now, the point is, in the past, you know, we've been very excited about AI sort of doing amazing things, but we've been having sort of AI winters for about 4 decades. And that's because actually we weren't very good at writing this code. Humans write instructions, but all the computer is doing is implementing at speed and at depth things that we're telling it to do. Now, a big phase change happened probably around 2016, I would date it, where we changed the way we were writing code. And this is why we're starting to get something which is surprising us, doing things that we weren't expecting, and therefore the appearance of maybe something we can call an independent intelligence. And this is because we're writing code from the bottom up rather than top down. So we're allowing code to interact with data, and through that interaction, it updates itself and says, well, I got that wrong last time, so actually how can I reparameterize my code such that next time I will get that right? There's a really interesting message for education here, because this code only gets better when it fails. When it gets something wrong, it then updates and says, well, how can I have done that better? I think in our education system, we expect everyone to get everything right, and we only learn really when we get things wrong. So it's a really nice microcosm of how we learn best as humans. Get something wrong, update it. Now the interesting thing is, this is allowing the possibility for the code to start to drift away from what the original human who wrote it, because it's developing, changing, getting more and more complex. And so when we talk about the output of the code, there's the interesting possibility that output really wasn't the seed of the human who wrote that first bit of code. But it's more like, you know, we don't say that Picasso is the product of the DNA of his 2 parents. But we don't say Picasso's creativity is a product of the parents, because Picasso went through a learning process and the environment impacted. And I think you should think about it as a similar sort of process. The code we're seeing evolving is being affected by its interaction with the digital environment. And therefore is actually becoming something independent from the humans who started the learning process off. And that's what I think is so exciting. That phase change in the way code is produced, dropping the mic.
Mic drop moment.
It is, I think, why there is a potential, and we'll get onto this, you know. I think people feel like, well, sure, you can't be creative, that's something unique to the human expression of our internal emotions and things. But my belief, and that's what I wrote about in this book, is that actually this has the potential to be creative. So that's a little sad.
And that brings in Dr. Tharoor. He said that brings in the potential to be creative. One very interesting aspect is, how would you define what is creative?
See, I've always thought that creativity involved innovation. That is, it's the human capacity to think of something new. A new story, a new idea, a new poem, a new piece of art, a new work, with both imagination and skill. And I think of imagination as a particularly human quality. And skill, of course, can be learned and often needs to be learned, but it can also be learned by yourself doing it. Now, that part AI has begun to do. So, for the longest time, and certainly, excuse me, for much of the early AI, I think it was essentially regurgitative.
Absolutely.
It was sort of like a slightly more sophisticated Google search model. It went and searched through data and told you what was already out there.
Yeah.
But it seems to have moved, as Marcus was saying, to something more than just regurgitation. Now you're getting ChatGPT to write poems to your sweetheart, which alarms me, certainly. It certainly undermines all my teenage years. That's another matter. But you also find this mimicking of humans in other and slightly more worrying ways. It makes mistakes. I've been very struck by the fact that artificial intelligence, with its capacity to troll through all this data, still makes errors and can get some basic facts wrong. not just because it's trawled through the wrong data, but because it actually sometimes makes things up that never were.
Absolutely.
And I've begun to notice this in a couple of things. I, searched for something on two different AI platforms for a column I was writing, and they gave two different answers. Actually, both were wrong. So what was striking was it then took a human sub-editor to tell me in which way. So I mean, I can tell you it was my last column in a magazine called The Week. It was a fairly straightforward question about how many Indian cardinals there have been and how many of them are still around. So one told me 4, the other told me 6, and the correct answer was 5.
You feel fantastic. And it's music or it's art. Would the value change if you knew it was created by AI?
Now, this is really interesting because I did in the book I talk about an experiment that was done at Basel Art Fair. And they had a gallery just filled with pictures, and they asked people to, which ones you finding exciting and most engaging. And then afterwards, they were told, the ones you were really finding interesting emotionally were all created by AI. And the reaction was, I feel cheated. But if I told you a joke and you will laugh, and then I say that was created by ChatGPT, that doesn't invalidate your laughter. So what's going on here? I think what we have to remember is that this AI is learning on our art. It's being given our emotional world, and it's a new kind of pair of glasses. It's like a new tool, a new way of looking at it. So it's not surprising if it's learned on our emotional world that it's going to produce things which
it's interesting that some artists have now sued the company that generates the album that does this art in Europe, on the grounds that what they've done is they have trawled what is publicly on the internet of their art, and then their programs, having been trained on this existing art that they created through their effort and their imagination, is now generating imitative art in their styles, and thereby undervaluing, leading to a loss of value for what they themselves have produced. Now, many of them have demanded and succeeded in ensuring that their art is taken off the internet, so that it cannot be used to train an AI program. And that raises real questions. So if you have an artist whose work is completely available on the internet, let's say Picasso, you might actually get a new Picasso out of an AI machine, out of an AI program. Whereas if you have a contemporary artist who doesn't want that to happen, and wants to preserve their own creativity, they can actually, in some countries anyway, have their stuff taken off the internet so they can generate their own work.
I think it's jolly unfair on AI. So, we don't deny a new emerging artist the ability to look at the art of the contemporaries, read books, all the books that you read. Suddenly you're not allowed to use any of them, or you've got to forget them all when you do your own. Of course not. Every artist is informed by the art of the past, and why are we denying AI the opportunity to learn from our art of the past? I think the dividing line...
Marcus.
Yes.
So if artist X has got, let's say, 25 paintings on the net, and the AI program that produces a 26 painting, that person's style, his ability to sell his 26 goes down. Whereas a creative writer has read hundreds of books by hundreds of different authors, has learned what he thinks he enjoys and what he can write better and what he can't do so well, and then he or she writes something totally original, not trying to imitate a particular writer. Now, if you have an artist, all of whose work is imitative of one other artist, then it's not really art.
No, and
it would have no value in it.
Absolutely, and if a human did it, it would also, they'd be brought to court as plagiarism. So I think we already have legal processes
underway.
Which can apply to AI as well. The elusive panacea of the modern era seduces us with its promises of boundless potential, yet in its intricate tapestry lies a tangled skin of contradictions. The effervescent proponents of this digital demigod extol its versions with unabashed fervor, and so it goes on. So
I told you I make mistakes. I don't write like that. Anyway, you should do a podcast on my real writing. Well, you read with so much emotion. That's creative. I don't think AI programs would read like that.
So is that how Dr. Tharoor would write?
No, I don't think so. Actually, the internet is full of these jokey attempts. I mean, somebody got someone to write a leave application on the grounds that he wasn't feeling the vibes that day, in the style of Sashi Tharoor. I mean, they're on the but it really was twaddle, to be honest. I am not convinced that this is working yet.
I think recently you were upset.
Maybe I could do it better.
Well, an encouraging thought for us novelists and writers, and I think actually ChatGPT and these text generating things have a limitation, and it's about time. They don't have a very good concept of time. So a novel is a long-term process where you're keeping track of many things, weaving them together. And ChatGPT sort of starts to just lose track of the plot, quite literally, often, after, it's very good at like 3 or 4 paragraphs, but you try and push it to 20,000 words, it really, it has enough memory to know what it said, but it doesn't weave it together very well. So, a 100,000 word novel, I think we're pretty safe, actually, for now, that it just does it. Because again, it does things on a statistical level. So it just analyses what's the most likely thing that comes out of the last sort of few things I've seen. So, I've seen a novel which was written, a collaboration between a human artist and one of the earlier versions of GPT, and it was just a stream of consciousness on both sides, actually. And it was kind of exciting locally, but globally it was incredibly unsatisfying. And even the jazz improviser was very interesting, because you listen to this concert and initially you think, wow, that's amazing, it's responding, but after about 5 minutes it becomes boring, because the AI hasn't got anything to say, doesn't know where it's going, it's just locally producing things which are consistent. So my feeling is that the moment, that long form, I saw a very interesting case of a novelist who tried to push GPT to its extremes to write something. And it was a spy novel, and there was one character that was a double agent. ChatGPT blew this in the first chapter. And you want the build-up to, oh my gosh, that person was working for the other side, but ChatGPT just didn't understand that element of time. It blew the whole information in the first chapter.
That's fascinating.
So I think we're safe up here.
As you start.
In many ways, the encouraging thing that came out of this to me is that at least you still need human beings to prompt the software, and that the creativity may lie in the prompting. That may be the only sort of residual hope. I know Marcus is far more of a tech optimist than I am. But I would like to think that I expect more from a writer than an ability to prompt a software. I would like to think that there's a combination of that person's experience, that person's imagination, that person's suffering, perhaps if it's that kind of novel, that informs their writing. A machine which is merely stealing other people's experiences to inform itself about how to describe a certain emotion or a certain experience. To my mind, there's something inauthentic about such a product by comparison with a human being writing about what he or she has really experienced. You read, Manoj Vyapari writing about what it's like to be a Dalit. You read, there's this tremendous writing, from somebody who used to be a domestic servant, learned how to, and then wrote about that life. I mean, I would hate to have AI telling us in the voice of a novel of somebody who's been a domestic servant without ever having actually personally undergone those tribulations. You see what I'm saying? This is perhaps a very old-fashioned view, and 10 years from now people will think I was just a troglodyte or a Luddite or a combination of both. But I still value what human beings can bring to the table and to the world in ways that I'm still not convinced AI can do. Use AI for diagnosing illnesses because your best doctor has only seen 200 patients without symptoms, and AI can go through 1 million cases and give you the exact diagnosis. That's wonderful. Put it to good use in medicine, put it to good use in public health, put it to good use in all sorts of things. But let human beings do what they've always done and just use it, as you said very early on in our conversation, as a tool. As something that helps us, not something that supplants or replaces.
And actually,